Γεια σας, hello, I'm Algestis, and I'd like to welcome you to the Hellenic Wellness Movement. Donald, welcome to Athens, welcome to the Athens Stoa.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here.
Holding our kilix.
Felix.
Ding!
You know. Cheers.
Cheerio. Anyway, so what brings you to Athens around this time?
Well,
In the time of the
time of
coronavirus.
the plague. Well, I had been travelling, moving around a little bit when the pandemic happened. I was kind of cut adrift a little bit. I didn't really have a permanent place to stay, and I have some friends who are going to be here soon and who are here, and so I thought Athens was a place that I really wanted to be and spend my time and to work on my book, on my graphic novel, which is what I'm doing at the moment.
You're becoming an Athenian slowly.
A little bit, I'm turning a little bit Athenian.
I see your life going between Canada, Rome, and Athens.
That'd be nice. Yeah.
You're like a true Stoic. You live in a free way, as a freedom. Like you're not interested in any material possessions. You carry the basic minimum of clothes. I've noticed.
Yeah, I'm not good at it. The older I get, the less money I spend. Somehow, the more money I have, the less I spend. Weirdly, so I gave away a lot of my stuff over the years now. Almost everything I have fits in a suitcase.
You're like part of this minimalist movement, perhaps?
Accidentally. I'm an accidental minimalist.
Well, I think Stoics, from what we know, are like, they have what's preferred indifference.
Mm-hmm.
So they're indifferent to luxuries, but if they happen to be there, we will enjoy them.
Mm-hmm.
But you can live without. And comfortably so, you're okay with that?
Stoics have what I would call, and Marcus Aurelius kind of phrases it a little bit less, a sort of take it or leave it attitude.
Take it or leave it,
Yeah.
It's not like you need, like a lot of people, they need status symbols. They have status anxiety.
Mm-hmm.
And you notice they work a lot, they work jobs they don't like, so that they can show off to the neighbors, or even to themselves. Say, I'm driving a Porsche, I'm wearing this Nike.
Mm-hmm.
But what I love about Stoicism is that essentially we're free. Like I used to live on an island in a tent for 7 years. And I think it was like an exercise in Stoicism, Stoic living. But I have to say, I'm the same person. Like my happiness level has not risen. I'm not happier because I live in a beautiful house by the sea. I'm just as happy as when I lived in a tent by the sea. So.
Yeah, I think I'm happier as I get older. I'm not sure exactly why, but I think it's maybe because I'm writing more, and that's something that I always...
You're doing more of what you want, what you really love.
Yeah.
That's what you love.
Mm-hmm.
But I also notice you do fasting, for example.
Do fast, live fast, die fast.
The fast.
I like to fast. I'm kind of like I'm a little bit like a tortoise, I think.
Tortoise?
Yeah.
How so?
Kelowna. Like I'm a quite slow-moving creature, and I think I'm a kind of slow metabolism. I don't eat that much. I always felt I was eating too much when I was younger. Now, I noticed that I could fast real easy. I could go for a day or two without eating food, and I barely got hungry. So I started to fast because I felt healthier when I did it, and it came really
fasting
natural.
It's very healthy, and the Stoics recommend fasting, regular fasting. Abstinence, just to show freedom from something, to be prepared.
And you enjoy your food more. Socrates said that hunger is the greatest relish, so that if you overeat, then you spoil your appetite. He said.
That's true.
And if you learn to be disciplined and control your appetite, you actually get more pleasure from your food.
That's true. If it's few good things. A couple of figs we have here in Greece. Figs, a couple of grape vine. That's all you need.
Yeah.
Cheese,
Simple
wine.
Food.
Wine. So no, that's one thing we definitely agree on. We have this, both of us, we have this passion For wisdom, I think, seeking wisdom and trying to live according to wisdom.
The unexamined life is not worth living. So it gives us something to do with our time, like to try and understand life and
plus, you know
ourselves.
what? Someone said, I believe it was Marcus Aurelius, but any wise person would have said this. They say that the quality of your life is dependent on the quality of your thoughts and not the external things. Okay, because you can be in luxury but be miserable because of the thinking, the way of thinking. You could be paranoid. You can be envious. And you could be seething with resentment. This has happened to me. You know, outwardly I had a comfortable life, but on the inside, I'm a little paranoid. I'm afraid of what they're saying. I'm resenting people. So, what's the quality of my life there? It's low. It's very low. So, what I love about Stoicism is that it's given me this ability to reflect on my own thinking, to test my own thinking, to say, hang on, is that true? I love that statement. Is it true? Question your thoughts.
And in some respects, we have a modern epidemic of anxiety disorders and depression. And in some regards, people throughout much of history, although they had far less, or we think of them as having less than we do today. They didn't have the internet and central heating and double glazing and things like that. But they seem generally to have been happier. Then we are particularly depressed and unhappy society in the first world.
That is
ironically
absolutely true. Yeah, ironically, because the average Westerner, even of the middle class, has more luxury in their life than maybe the King of France. The King of France, Louis XIV, could not get into an airplane and go somewhere and fly. You know, they could not have music whenever they wanted it. They had to organize like a concert. We just turn on the iPod and we have any music we want, and that's a luxury. We don't think of it as a luxury.
Yeah, we get used to our expectations change. And we're never happy.
I think we're like spoiled kids, spoiled rich kids in a way.
Society, we're never happy. We're like spoiled kids.
Yeah. So I think that this is why Stoicism is so current. It's such a good influence right now.
I think there's a bunch of things. Like I think we're maybe spoiled in some respects in the first world, and so people at some level begin to feel jaded with it. That's what they tell me. Like from having spoken to a lot of people, and they tell me why they became interested in Stoicism. They say, they were working in a big city and earning a lot of money. A lot of people that are interested in Stoicism are millennials that work in the tech industry, so they're relatively affluent, but they're still not happy, and so that inspires them to dig deeper and look within and look at their values. But then the other thing is that we're bombarded with stuff on social media and in the news media, like telling us what we should desire, our expectations, and also telling us what we should be frightened of, trying to freak us out constantly with the kind of alarmist things in the news. And we have this 24/7, and it's trying to manipulate us. Like they want to grab our attention, so we watch more news so they can sell us more advertising, and they keep us in a constant state of alarm almost, like
but it's not like a conspiracy, it's just media. It's like
how media make their money.
I'm not so much like they are trying to do that. Everyone's just trying to get our attention. I mean, it's not an organized effort by the Illuminati.
They're competing to get our attention.
Yes.
That's how it works. But then we have to protect ourselves against that.
This is it. Here is where Stoicism, and what I like, for me, my key word is self-leadership, self-discipline. That's what I like about the Stoics, is that there's this self-discipline. It's like, no, I've done enough social media for today. It's like you're not going to be hypnotized, a zombie, stuck on media. You have to free yourself at some point.
Yeah, I think of it also in terms of kind of becoming like a therapist or a parent or a guardian or a manager or supervisor to ourselves.
Yes.
And we seem to need at some point to learn this ability to step out of ourselves and take a look at what we're doing and how we're living and become like a mentor to ourselves.
I totally like that, and this is again another reason I'm drawn to Stoicism, because I find that it's the philosophy for adults. Okay, for people who don't want to believe in the tooth fairy and other like religious stories of, you know, I don't want to, and it's for adults who say, I'm going to take responsibility for my life. I will take responsibility for my thoughts. I'm not going to blame. I'm not going to complain. I'm going to take action on the things I can take action on. It's really the philosophy for people who want to be mature adults. Okay? You're not expecting Big Daddy in the sky to save you. You're not expecting, you know, it's man up or woman up. You know, become who you are, take charge of yourself. This is what I like about Stoicism.
There's a saying in the Meditations of Marcus Aurelius that he repeats to himself, I think, 3 times. So it looks like it was like a favourite saying of his.
Yeah. And
it's very concise. I think in the ancient Greek, it's just 6 words or something, and it says, stand upright rather than being set upright by other people, which today we would say you have to learn to stand on your own 2 feet and not depend on other people to keep you on the right path. Stand upright, don't be set upright.
Exactly, don't be propped up by other people. You love Marcus Aurelius, don't you?
Yeah, I like Marcus Aurelius.
Your book here, I love it. How to Think Like a Roman Emperor. I love your cover, like with the earphones. Modern, jazz him up a little, make
That's
him
the
more.
publisher's idea, but it's grown on me.
I love the cover.
Like it.
I love the cover. And well, was he like he was reading in Greek. Now he was reading the philosophers in Greek.
He wrote the Meditations is written in Greek, and he trained extensively for many years, for over a decade, in Greek rhetoric with not our friend actually, but someone very famous in Athens, Herodes Atticus.
Herodes Atticus.
Who was actually a really horrible person. But Marcus Aurelius, he was a kind of family friend. He was the most famous sophist in the world at the time, the most famous orator at the time. And he was very good, like, it caused him a lot of trouble actually. But he taught Marcus Aurelius Greek rhetoric.
Greek rhetoric, the art of persuasion.
Extensively, yeah.
The art of influence.
Yeah.
So I started out with the art of rhetoric in a way too. I did this management training where I showed people the art of influence according to Aristotle. Ethos, pathos, logos, the famous rhetorical triangle. And as you may know, my method then was built on that Aristotle system. So instead of trying to influence others through ethos, pathos, logos, I inverted it as an inner compass and say that every decision you make or every thought you have that's a critical thought, you pass through ethos. In other words, you ask, is it true? Am I lying to myself? Does it have integrity? Is it aligned with my values? And then you pass it through the filter of pathos. So this is your why, your feelings, your fears, you address those. And also your dreams, your passions. Pathos is passion. And the last filter is logos. You have to pass your decisions through, well, does it make sense? Is there a strategy? Is there proof? So it's a very simple self-navigating tool based on Aristotle. But then I integrated it also with Stoicism because, well, how can you miss the whole school of I mean, I didn't want to be only Aristotelian. I wanted to sort of integrate all Greek philosophy. I liked how Massimo Pigliucci said it. He said, Greek philosophy, it's a big tent. It's a big tent. It has space for the Epicurean input, for the Stoic input, for Aristotle. Like, let's just take the best out of all and see what we can really agree on.
Yeah, there's different ways of studying Greek philosophy. And in universities, normally, you study Plato, you study Aristotle. But we actually miss quite a lot of Greek philosophy when we do that because there's a lot of stuff that comes in between. So if you look at Diogenes Laertius, for example, Lives and Opinions of the famous philosophers, the eminent philosophers, there are many other philosophers of other schools and traditions that fall in between these stools, and there's lots of things, ideas that they have to contribute, and we realise that these different schools actually kind of overlap to some extent with each other, and then there's all these other little bits that surround them.
Especially on the 4 cardinal virtues. We can say that all, I've noticed, like all Greek philosophy schools somewhere, if you water them down, if you take their essence, it's all about areti, living with virtue. It's about ethos. It's about agape, love, and brotherly love, and sisterly love. And the 4 cardinal virtues: courage, justice, wisdom, and temperance. This is what Greek philosophy is in a nutshell.
These are big themes that run through most of Greek philosophy.
Yeah.
And partly Socrates is to blame for that, maybe, and then maybe there's the other traditions that, and then even Greek philosophy goes beyond philosophy into the tragedians and the culture in general. The
culture, the values are permeating through the tragedians or the Homer's Odyssey. They have the values. This is it. What are the Hellenic values that were later adopted by the Romans and by the whole world later?
But then on the other hand, the other thing you might observe is that Stoicism is, until recently, maybe it was possibly a lot more popular in America than it was in Greece.
Oh, absolutely. It's still not popular in Greece.
No.
I'm working on it.
But it's taken Greece a little while to catch on to the fact that Stoicism became popular.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that sort of saddens me, and that's why I think like a mission is to rekindle this love for Stoicism, for Epicureanism, for philosophy, because I, like many Greeks, also ventured off and I explored yoga and Buddhism. I lived in an ashram for a while. I went to a Sufi center in Turkey, and with the dervishes, and I was just trying to find wisdom. But then I was like, Stoicism, the thing I didn't think of. It's like it was always there, but then I just made like a 360, came back to it.
Yeah, Stoicism. It's like a lot of the Greek philosophy. I always thought of it as being like, at least since when I was a young guy in Scotland, and I first discovered Stoicism, it reminded me of someone who's wandering about in a forest or the countryside somewhere, and they see some rocks on the ground, but they don't really think much of it. They just kind of kick them over or something, and then gradually they realise that it's the outline of a wall, and it's the remnants of a ruined building, and that maybe these little bits and pieces used to be part of a whole massive temple complex or something much bigger. And I think we find little fragments of Stoicism in Greek philosophy. I heard about some of these ideas from Scottish poetry, from Robert Burns, from my father's interest in Freemasonry, which puts a lot of emphasis on the 4 cardinal virtues. But so I'd heard these things, but I didn't know what they were or where they came from. And then I discovered there was this thing called Stoicism, and I realised that these little bits and pieces that I'd kind of been barely conscious of were pieces of a bigger jigsaw, and that there once was this whole systematic model of philosophy.
And not only once was, it's livable today. And even if we don't have like all the details, we have enough information to know what it's like to be a Stoic, to be a practicing Stoic. We know that you want to practice memento mori on a regular basis, remembering your mortality each day in order to live more intensely in the present moment and to have your business in order. We know that the second practice is like amor fati, accepting and loving what is. We know the other practice of the dichotomy of control, regularly filtering our thoughts as to the things we can control and the things that are out of our control, and other things that are needed to practice to be a Stoic. So we don't have to have seen the great, it doesn't have to be something that's there. We have everything to see what's there.
Yeah, and one of the reasons for that is that we have the Stoics wrote a lot of books. Chrysippus alone wrote over 700 books, and then there were many other Stoic teachers. The Stoicism was a thriving tradition for nearly 500 years, from Zeno all the way down to Marcus Aurelius, who's the most famous, but also essentially the last famous Stoic of antiquity, about 500, almost 500 years after Zeno founded the school. But of that, we only have maybe, at a rough estimate, about 1% of the literature that survives today. Nevertheless, as you're saying, although it was a complex and diverse thing, of course, the literature that we have surviving was probably among the best, and that's why it survived.
Yeah.
It was the creme de la creme,
Exactly.
and some people curated it for us. But also, it tends to emphasise. So the Stoics were very interested in keeping our focus on what was most important. Epictetus is constantly berating his students, saying, don't get distracted, keep your attention on the key thing. And so actually, in a sense, it is fairly clear what Stoicism is about, because Epictetus and the other Stoics will say, look, it's this idea that virtue is the only true good, and that it's not things that upset us, but our opinions about them, and a cluster of other ideas that they keep returning to, because they clearly think that's the essence of the philosophy. So they preserved the essence pretty clearly for us.
And why not keep things simple so that most people can absorb it and practice it? Why make it lofty and intellectual? Because that's what I love about Stoicism. Like, of all the philosophies, it's the most pragmatic and practical, and, if you like, easy steps to learn about. Now, to practice that, like every other practice, I mean, every day it's a challenge.
I think the way I understand the culture of philosophy in ancient Greece is that in the generation after the death of Socrates, there was kind of a competition, or there was perceived to be a contrast between two polar opposite ways of understanding what it means to be a philosopher. One of them is represented by Plato and the Academy, and the other one is represented by Diogenes the Cynic. And so Plato thought people should study mathematics and geometry and metaphysics, like in an academic, as we say today, style, a bookish style. And Diogenes thought that was ridiculous, and that simply led people astray, and that we should focus entirely on just living with integrity and mastering ourselves. And the Stoics, I think, who came a couple of generations later, thought what we need is something in between. So they thought it is helpful to study psychology and logic and things like that, but not to disappear up your own backside in a puff, not to do it as much as the academics. So they thought it's useful to study these things only insofar as they help to improve your character. But they could also become a vice if you just bury your nose in books and spend all your time in a library. So I see them as trying to strike this path down the middle between Diogenes at one end and Plato
I agree.
at the other.
That's how I see it too. And there's a Christian saying that I think goes well here. I think it's Corinthians 13. It says, you may speak many languages and know many arts, but if you have no love, you're like an empty drum. So if you're an only academic, only, hyper knowledge, and on the basic level, you don't express kindness, caring, intelligence, if you don't have practical skills, then what's it for? You're just another talking head.
Marcus Aurelius says to himself, you mentioned this kind of filter or test earlier, his version of it, it's a little bit different, but similar kind of idea. So there are passages in the Meditations where Marcus, one of the biggest nerds in it, like one of the bookiest, sort of nerdiest kind of people, nevertheless in the Meditations keeps saying to himself, cast aside your books, because he thinks he's kind of doing too much of that. I don't think he's suggesting that he should be completely ignorant, but maybe he's indulging in too much in these kind of scholarly pursuits. But the question he asks himself is, of every action and of every thought, does this contribute to the fundamental goal of life? Does it contribute to you down in here? Does it contribute to my happiness? He says, is it necessary, is how he phrases it. And he explains by that he means, does this actually contribute to the fundamental goal of life? reading this book, for example, or am I just killing time? When like there are certain forms of studying that could be a vice, a distraction. For instance, so he wants to keep reminding himself to bring from prosoche or mindfulness, everything, like keep bringing it back to, is this actually contributing to the real goal?
Indeed. I'm loving speaking with you, by the way. It's fun.
I know, like, do you know...
Got any Stoics jokes?
Okay, this is a bit of an obscure one. I don't know, the Greeks won't think it's funny. But how many Heracliteans does it take to change a light bulb?
Something...
How many followers of Heraclitus?
Many?
No, only one. But he can't change the same light bulb twice. Did get that kid?
I actually got that one.
Yeah. You can't step into the same river twice.
Oh, I'm glad I got that one. My husband says I'm not good at getting jokes. That one I got. That's funny. How fun. How fun. Well, I hope we do this again sometime.
Yeah, looking forward to it. It's been a nice chat.
You're doing a great work. I appreciate you in my life.
Likewise.
Greece appreciates you.
Well, I love being in Greece. Like a second home to me.
It's fun. It's good. When you're here, it's good. You bring the light back. You're continuing the tradition of the light. So, thanks a lot. Let's cheers off again one more time.
One more time.
In our wonderful
Here's to philosophy. Here's to Greece.
Here's to philosophy. So, if you enjoyed today's video about Stoicism, go ahead and write your comments below. Also, share the video with friends who you think could benefit from Stoicism.